Thank you for coming out on such a beautiful evening. I am so impressed that people have made the trek from some distances as well. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. I know how many demands are on everyone's time. And I deeply appreciate that you've chosen to spend this evening focused on a value system that will become resources reflected in a budget to bring to all of you to serve our children and community. Tonight's forum is part of an ongoing budget development process, and as I've said before, a budget is more than numbers. It is a reflection of our values, our community values. It reflects what we as a community believe matters most. Earlier this fall, we asked you for your input through community surveys, and 3 priorities rose clearly to the top. And I need to say we had 350 responses, which is a record. Thank you. Thank you for caring and caring loudly. Priorities rose: academic rigor, and please pay more attention, deep attention to the next priority: the safety, mental health, and emotional well-being of our children, and extracurricular opportunities. Before we begin tonight's work, I need and want to pause and talk about the well-being of our children, because it sits at the heart of all we do. We are educating students in a time of not just uncertainty, but recent events in and around our communities, our nation, globally, have caused fear and anxiety for many families and for the entire school community. I have gotten relatively few questions of concern, but when I hear from students, whether it's 1 or 100, I will always address that. Students are why we are here. The concern sounds like this: what next? Regardless of what's happening outside our doors, I want to be clear about what is non-negotiable for me and for our schools. Every child who walks through our doors deserves safety, belonging, and the opportunity to learn without fear. I thought on my drive home from Boston yesterday, where I spent the last week, about the need to speak on behalf of the concerned voices who've reached out. They are voices of students. It isn't an option to be silent, because sometimes silence is immobilizing, and that would have been the case in this case. This is not a political stand. This is a human stand. I'm going to repeat that again. This is a human stand. Our schools do not sort or divide by background, belief, identity, or citizenship. We care for children, all children, and that will never change. While people may hold different views on many things, our shared purpose as a school is not political. It is deeply, deeply human. We exist to educate, to nurture, and to protect the young people entrusted to us. It is called in loco parentis. We are the parents and caregivers during the school day. We're founded on a framework of democracy, and democracy at its core is a set of institutions designed to manage conflict, not to erase it. Conflict will always exist. Democracy is a way we manage it without harming one another. So the most important goal of any conversation, whether it's a discussion here, dealing with a terrifying situation, or anything else, is to build a bridge to the next conversation. I am not here to engage in debate. I appreciate people who care loudly. I'm here to fortify what our school system stands for and our shared values of safety and belonging of all children. I will always act in a way that does not further harm or cause further harm to people. I will respect confidentiality. I will not take any action that I know will cause further harm to them. How do I know this? Because I talk to them. Here's the other thing. The reason we continue to engage, no matter the views people hold, is simple. We share children. We are the co-caregivers of our children. We have them together. Schools are the only places that touch everyone. They're where our future sits side by side, learning not only math, reading, and science, and other things, but what it means to live together in a community. The work of caring for children, all children, demands courage and compassion. It demands that we keep showing up together again and again for the sake of what we share together. Every student and staff member in our classrooms should know they are valued and safe. That is our promise. That is my promise, and it will never change. So as we turn to tonight's agenda, our priorities, our plans for the year ahead, let's keep that shared purpose at the center of the conversation. Every line item in our budget, every decision we make ultimately comes back to one question. Does this reflect our values and our commitment to all children? Thank you for being part of this work. We have a lot of work to do. Before we move on to Rainie's description of what this will look like at tables, I want to share that based on some public comment, Cole Hayes, our Director of Technology, Rainie and Dylan LaFlamme, part of our safety and security teams, will be holding a forum for people who are interested in coming to hear about general safety processes and procedures. As you know, we cannot discuss intricacies of safety systems because that compromises our children and our staff and our school community and the people in our buildings. So we will not be doing that. We will share and answer questions to hopefully alleviate concerns that clearly people have. And we're seeing it more and more in our current society. Thank you again for being part of this important work. I will turn this over to Rainie. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rainie Tebow. I am the Director of Communication and Marketing for the school district. I want to echo what Kat said. Thank you for coming out on another lovely night. We seem to have great luck on hosting community meetings on beautiful sunny afternoons and nice, beautiful evenings. So anyway, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. As we transition over into looking at some of the survey results, Dylan is Director of Facilities, is walking around passing out a sort of a high-level quick reference sheet that I'm hoping will be of use when we break out into our roundtable conversations. This is a look at the top voted for priorities from our community survey, as well as some of the key themes that stuck out and some of the supporting community comments going along with those key themes. So, you know, use these as you need them during those conversations. They are there for your use. As I move forward, Kat, though, did you want to touch on anything here?
Sure.
You'll see as you come into those documents come into your hands that the three top priority areas are, again, instruction, student supports, and co-curriculars, and followed very closely by school safety. Some of those big key themes, and again, I won't read them word for word. You have these documents there for your use. Calls to prioritize classroom learning, ongoing commitments to physical and emotional safety of buildings, concerns about updates to some of our grounds, parking lots, things like that when it comes to facilities. So this document is there. Please weave through that. It's a tool for your use. Do I have anything there, Kat?
No, I just want to, again, thank you for response.
Yes. Yeah. We very much thank everyone who took the 5 minutes or longer to complete the survey and share their thoughts with us. This is what this evening's all about. All of the information and comments and ideas and sharing that happens tonight will be shared with our board, and specifically the FCC, for further conversation. Thank you. So, as we move forward, and please keep eating as you do so, also shout out to Kelly Shortsleeve, our Director of School Nutrition, and her team over the corner. The night with the giraffes, you didn't see quite as many people. You guys crushed that evening as well. So as we transition into our roundtable conversations, there are a couple asks. We ask you to please identify a note taker at your table. There are some either notebooks or pieces of loose leaf paper that you can use to jot down notes from your conversation. There are also note cards at your table. Please use those as you need. If you have a thought, if you have a question during the presentation coming after, please utilize those. There are also markers at your table, and there are some large poster papers on the walls around the room. Think of those again as sort of the parking lots. If you have other big ideas that you want to get across to us, please utilize those on the table. So as we transition to the conversation, we are asking folks to look at those top 3 voted for priorities and answer the 3 questions that are there on the screen. What are our strengths within those top 3 areas? What are our opportunities for growth in those top 3 areas? And how can our FY27 school budgets reflect our collective school and community wants, again, based on those top 3 priorities? So we ask everyone to take about 20-ish minutes to have your conversation. Please identify a person who will report out to the group at the end of that time, and we will be collecting those notes.
That's not how that works.
Right, thank you. And then the second half is just tonight's meeting. The second half of tonight's meeting will be discussion of accident bipartisan board member PSBA.
I don't go to town.
The top 3 strengths are.
Why? I'm going to send you into a breakout room.
I don't know what I have. Nobody ever told me.
We nominate
So the same person. Danny, do you want to report? This would be the report. You need to prepare what's out.
Okay.
So what are our standards?
Yeah.
Okay, folks online. Please put
So I feel like you might have the most perspective.
Just should the note taker be?
So, is the effort that's being put in benchmark assessments. After in a timely way.
Certainly the high school has.
Jeremy, that reflected.
Yeah. I can't even keep track of this.
Like her, like organization or sharing that like the action.
So don't worry. High school.
Oh, yeah, there's a high bar.
I'm gonna put that as an area.
I know. They have like after school. Right. I'm sorry. Yes, I don't know. Like everywhere, but I know like that is part of the system.
Because they're supposed to be benchmarking, which is fine, like if they're below, good. Feeling like, so instead of saying like mark, it could be like.
Oh, sorry. It's fine, but there are families below. And there are families. Yeah.
So I'm Kelly Shortsley. So Robin and I answered these questions for as a parent of two students in the district. I'm kind of removing my other role in. So the three strengths that we came up with was for instruction, we had lots of opportunity for students who need extra resources for either catching up or for students who, need a little bit more because,
should I repeat? Did everybody hear that beginning part? Okay. We felt that there already was a lot of opportunity for students. For student services, we felt that there was a really quick response time for students who did need that support. And for co-curricular, we felt that lots of choices for a multitude of programming and sports, and it seemed very welcoming for all students. Areas for growth, we did one for each. So for instruction, we thought that having smaller classroom sizes would allow for more one-on-one support. For support services, we thought more access to mental health services and support, regardless of current insurance situations. And that maybe isn't necessarily financially part of budget talk, but just maybe building better relationships and partnerships with subcontracted companies. For co-curriculars, we had more offerings for elementary that aren't just 21C. We felt that currently there's just a lot of 21C offerings for elementary age. Unlike the middle and high school and tech up here, there's a magnitude of programming. And then I think the last question, we just said, if we had to pick one of those areas where we would want to see some investments, we really felt that student support services was an area we would like to see some more invested into, just to support mental health.
Thank you, Kelly. Vince table.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Beth Ann Puri. I'm the principal at the high school. We didn't even finish because we were in such great conversation, but we started with our strength in regard to instruction and classroom resources. And this is where I think we got talkative. So we feel that our district-wide effort to utilize a K through 12 curriculum map, benchmark assessments, ensuring that we're measuring student growth, and then providing communication home with families, like when we do have areas of concern. That's something that we have focused on and are doing. So with that, there's also, as you get into the upper levels, we feel that our flexible pathways is really something we're proud of. Students that are served by the tech center, students that have access to early college, AP courses, whatever it is that they're interested in, whether it's work study, co-oping, internships, like the list goes on. An area of growth in that would be really kind of now focusing in on what we do when students need more. So looking at like tutoring opportunities that's accessible to all students across the district, things like that. As far as student support services, which was the second area, we feel a strength is that we've built a lot of wraparound supports and resources for students. Examples include creating behavioral support teams, student support teams, ensuring that there's school-based clinicians in our schools, substance prevention, and mentoring. Mentoring was something we talked a lot about, and we also feel that it could be an area of growth, ensuring that there's mentoring happening district-wide for all of our schools. The third thing we talked about was co-curriculars, and we do definitely have so many offerings in the upper grade levels, different clubs. We've got math teams, chess teams, and the list goes on and on. We can keep kids really busy. The athletics that are open to students are not just like soccer, basketball, and baseball, but we have bass fishing, we have golf, we have all of these awesome opportunities for kids. An area of growth we would like to see is similar to what I heard Kelly share, and that is making sure that all of our schools have programs like Girls on the Run, Sports for Life, ski programs, and other opportunities. We know that these are protective factors for our kids. So there's another note down here that I did not add at the top around the academic stuff, like our tech program, sending our students to Skills USA, HOSA, did I say that correctly, Eric? FBLA, FFA. If you're wondering what all this is, he can tell you, but we are sending our kids all over the country. And I've had students that have gone to Texas to compete and are like unbelievable and off in college doing great things because of their access. So.
Thank you, Beth Ann. Quinn Steffens and Charlotte Kruger are going to report out to this table. Thank you.
For student support services, like as kids in the middle school, we think that it'd be really helpful to have more like 5-minute breaks within our class times, because after like an hour or so, because we have 75-minute classes, after like an hour, everyone starts to get more antsy and like we can't focus. So I think it'd be really helpful if we would take more breaks, because like, yeah, I don't know. Really.
Adults need those breaks too, so it resonates.
We also wrote in here for the student support services, the 5-minute breaks again. The student support center has been very helpful, and so has the office hours. Teachers can call you in for extra help, and that's good. And also office hours for counselors, so we can reach out more. Yeah, I think that's I'm gonna do the rest.
For co-curriculars, we think that for the middle school, it'd be helpful if there were like more clubs and teams, like a volleyball team. I was a part of the mountain bike club this year, and it was like a lot of fun. And I think that clubs and teams really help kids getting out like with their fellow like classmates and being active and being a part of their school community. I don't know.
And then we just have like maybe put some investments in the extracurricular, like some extracurricular activities, and maybe include more of them, like a math club or book club or art club. Yeah, I think that's all we have.
Thank you so much. That was great. Should we go to the group that is online?
Beth, Amy, Patty, does one of you want to report out?
I don't know that we have a lot to report out because we couldn't see the screen. So we didn't have the 3 top priorities. But we did talk a lot about the budget and how I told Amy and Beth that I don't think a lot of people realize what it takes as the board to do the budget. Like, before we can even start a budget, there are things that are already taken. Federal mandates, state mandates, teacher salaries, health care, benefits, all of that. And the day-to-day runnings of all the buildings. That all is done before we can even begin to think about some of these things that we're talking about tonight. And we're not really sure how that all comes into play a lot of times. That's what we kind of discussed.
I just sent a message. I don't know if anyone can see it in the meeting. I was just saying that like what Patty said, no one took a screenshot of the prompt. So we were kind of focusing on the last one about the allocation of funds. And we just kind of focused on how we're more concerned about like the future of the redistricting of the state, and like it's difficult to have a conversation about our community when we don't know what's up in the air. But with that aside, we just talked about how like our focus we felt should be on like support staff and the co-curriculars, which is just what the students brought up, which is great. So
I appreciate that. And this is the first group that brought up what you were talking about, Patty. And so you're going to hear more about Act 73 from Bart. So thank you for that. Annie, would you like to report out for your table?
Hello, my name is Danielle Sweet, and for our top strengths, we started talking about how amazing the tech center is and how many opportunities it has for people being able to learn and having different learning styles and for having more hands-on stuff and learning. We also talked about how Infinite Campus is a good way for knowing where assignments are and being able to talk to like teachers to figure out what you need to do if you miss it, and be able to go on if you're missing a day, or if you're at home, you can do them as well. And how there's a strong student staff relationship. I know like at the high school, we were able to go talk to our counselors a lot of the time if you're struggling on anything, or there's a lot of teachers you can talk to if you need, and they'll be able to like to listen and help you out. And and how there's a good align with a K through 12 curriculum for learning, and how it's evenly spaced, like along the testing, and how that has improved over the years of learning, how we've gone through different tests, and now how there's better ways of being able to track students' improvements and learning, and how before when there's a bunch of different tests, like you couldn't really tell, or kids weren't doing their best because they couldn't understand it. For places of growth, we talked about more elementary extracurricular. What? Extracurricular, especially in like more arts type of stuff, or more like, or like more maths or reading and like chess and stuff like that, because I know there's a lot of like sports stuff where there's like baseball and basketball and soccer where the more sports are popular, but there's not a lot of like clubs you can stay in after school where you can learn about more reading or go off and do maths or like and all that. And how there's then not a lot of parent involvement since COVID happened, because it's like that whole like the whole pandemic happened and everyone was struggling trying to get back, and like going to like student activities, like, or participations, like parent organizations, like on how in the middle school for like 8th grade trip fundraising, they have all those where it's better now that they're having like parents be able to sign up and help out their kids for selling stuff. And then how we need to work on more childcare and pre-K work with, there's not a lot of like opportunities for being able to drop your kids off for every day a week if when you have work, and how there's only like a couple days, or there's a lot of people getting fired because there's been incidents of child endangerment.
School system.
What?
Not the school.
Not in the school system. Not in the school system, no. Sorry. We're talking about more like a daycares where they're not part of the school system.
What she means to say is, but if the lack of childcare on the bus route, so if they're not on the bus route, then they can't get to school. And then parents lose their jobs because.
Yeah. Yes.
For budget, we talked about, what does that say? I don't know. Oh, making sure there's no cuts in interventionists at younger levels, like through pre through K, about for more math and literacy, for more about like being able, more opportunities for learning about spelling and learning cursive. Because I know when I was in elementary school, I didn't get that opportunity to learn cursive because it just like wasn't an option there. Like we had a couple things in the morning, but we didn't really have like any class time where we're able to learn how to do it, or how there's not a lot of opportunities to have more math or reading to get better, especially if you need more help for struggling or in class time. I think that's really it.
Who from this table?
No, staying.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from your great ideas. We do have to
I'll be brief. Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Benazzel, Johnson Elementary School principal. We talked about making sure teachers have all the tools they need for instruction and resources is something that we cared about. We talked about sense of belonging and positive relationships at the middle school and at Johnson specifically being particularly positive. For student support services, that the support services that are already in place are great. Kids know who to go to. They have trusted adults. That's fantastic. Providing a place for students to have a sense of belonging with a person and a place to go. For curricular concerns, we talked about co-curricular programs and athletics in the middle school are outstanding. And a suggestion is to get the word out about things that are going on in our schools to folks who might not be directly connected to the schools. That was a big part of the second half of our conversation, specifically finding ways to outreach that are maybe in a blanket format instead of piecemeal. So making sure that if you're sending out through one avenue, that it's going out through all so that people get that each time.
Thank you, Dave.
Hello. We did instructional resources, a lot of the same stuff that everyone else in the room had done. We just wanted to, I guess, highlight the strength that the teachers and staff in the school are constantly doing a lot of professional development, and they're just excellent at their work. And so that's a large strength. And a space for growth, same as Dan was saying, just more community communication or open doors so that they can get in and see what we're doing.
And I had notes for the student support services, strengths that we talked about in our group, the numerous partnerships with a variety of agencies around Lamoille County. When a student has a need of some issue, immediately team meetings are formed in the schools and community resources are contacted, and there's a great unity that comes around the students to find the needs outside of the school that can be applied. School resource officers that we have at the high school and the elementary schools really know students and their families and help a lot. Starting in kindergarten, teachers emphasize the social emotional wellness for kids, and that's followed through all the way up through the high school. A positive and a negative. We talked about behavioral interventionists being in the school. Some schools can afford that, not all schools can. And we need to think collaboratively with Lamoille County Mental Health so that their budgets aren't cut, because we hear that that's something that's taking place right now. So we want to be careful of the needs of our agencies as well so that they remain strong and can help. Growth. We felt that there are students who might need more opportunities than we can currently provide. We'd like to look at student learning styles, look at different resources possible, and try to find therapeutic settings for our students in the building if possible. For the budget, continue to support interagency collaborations, and continue to support student emotional and social awareness by providing continued professional development for our teachers. And we did not have time to get to co-curriculars.
Who's going to report out, Chris?
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Dodge. I'm the principal at Eden. And for instruction, we talked about as a strength the high quality of our teachers and some of the new curriculum pieces that we've put into place this year that have a strong emphasis on basic skills. For growth areas, we talked about maybe updating some curricular pieces that are already in place. And for budget in that category, we talked about wanting to make sure that we sustain the professional development that we offer to teachers. For student support services, we had a great conversation about how Lamoille North places a strong emphasis on building internal capacity and having great relationships with outside agencies, but also really building the capacity that we have internally to support our students. So we have the best of both worlds with that. And wanting to make sure that the budget continues to fund the building of that internal capacity. As an area of growth, we talked about thinking about a SEL, social emotional learning framework that might span all of our grade levels. And we, like so many others, just barely scratched the surface with the final category, co-curricular, but we talked about really celebrating the integration of programs that we have in our schools with the programs of our local community partners and how those pieces work together and wanting to make sure that those things continue. And thinking about our third spaces for students when our children are not with us and in our buildings, what those third spaces are and how we can continue to support them even when they're not within the walls of our school buildings.
Thank you, Chris. Got one more table.
So obviously we have a lot of overlap with everybody else. I'll touch on a couple of things. As far as the strengths, we kind of looked at it, went down the three questions up there and hit all three topics at once. But strength-wise, we thought instructionally and co-curricularly in particular, there always been an opportunity, say instructionally enrichment at the elementary levels all the way up through AP classes at high school. So we had both kind of an opportunity and accessibility throughout the system. Co-curricularly, the same thing with, if you look at the clubs that are available at all the different levels, and all of these different things, APs, the enrichment, the clubs, change over time, right? So it stays fresh. What is popular remains popular. What isn't, I think it's a strength that they seek out, the schools seek out something new and try to engage more with the students. So that was a strength. I'll jump down just quickly how to have the budget reflect, I think would be to continue. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself to continue with these top three and continue to, it sounds, I'm going to bring up the vision to keep that equity, access, and opportunity going, because that really kind of is, you see it right here in these results and what comes out. So that was, just continue on with these important things.
Thank you so much, Mark. And if you have any burning questions or a wondering, write them down, leave them on the tables, and we will collect them at the end. We are fast forwarding to introduce Bart Bazaya, who is a board member and also rep to the Vermont School Boards Association. And he is going to take us briefly through what we now know about Act 73.
So just starting with the agenda for the topics we want to cover, we'll touch upon first the state of the state, go into Act 73, various working groups that were set up by Act 73, some of the key provisions. We'll look at Lamoille North as it stands today and how it might be impacted by some of the proposed maps and legislation that might come down
the road. And then lastly, we will cover Lamoille North action activity. How will we monitoring, how are we providing written testimony for all of these changes that are coming down the pipe. State of the state. So we are currently at 119 school districts, 52 supervisory units, supervisory districts, 290 individual schools in the state, 83,500 students. Vermont really serves a really diverse and complex education system in the state of Vermont due to our rurality and the needs that have come up over the course of the years. I do have a graph on this page to really illustrate the trends since really the mid 2010s that have taken place. So the top line there, you see that is that's the staff at schools, and the blue line is the enrollment. So across the state, we are seeing declining enrollment, and really the needs of our students are just continuing to go up as you look at the need for mental health support. More and more is being asked of our school systems. And that has led to Vermont having the highest pupil staff ratio in the country at 4 to 1. Let's see. So in Act 24, that's the FY26 yield bill. Legislature used $118.2 million in one-time funds to reduce FY26 property tax bills. So from a property tax perspective, we've got a pretty big gap to fill as a state going into this year's budget cycle. So, either that's going to translate to higher property taxes, or we're going to have to identify other revenue sources. The Joint Fiscal Office notes that each $14 million of education spending in the state represents 1 cent on the property tax rate. Moving on. So Act 73, you've heard a lot about it probably by now. That is the transformational education law that passed in this past June. It was a bit of a whirlwind. The legislative session was extended, and this was passed. But really, the intent there around Act 73 is to address the following issues: inequitable access to education, to ensure all students have equal access to resources and educational opportunities across geographies. Its intent is to alleviate high and unpredictable property taxes, to create a more uniform education property tax system and a statewide funding formula. Another issue is system inefficiencies. It was implemented to address inefficiencies and challenges in the current system through consolidation into fewer larger districts. Also, there's an aim to improve educational quality. The intent there is to allow for more long-term investment in teachers and learning. Cost savings. We want to create a more efficient system that can mitigate costs and improve educational outcomes. And lastly, standardization. We want to establish statewide standards for things like class sizes and graduation requirements. So really transformational legislation. I think there was a lot of shared objectives. People generally agree with the objectives. I think there's a lot of questions to, is this really going to accomplish this? Right. So the key components of Act 73, first of all, from a governance and district structure, Act 73 establishes the redistricting task force. Its mission is to redraw school district boundaries, aiming for student bodies between 4,000, 8,000 to the extent practical, aimed at optimizing our educational resources. We'll go into some of the bodies, the working groups that were established as part of Act 73 a little bit, but that redistricting task force is getting a lot of publicity right now. Moving on to finance and funding. The act introduces a foundation funding formula and a statewide education property tax structure that starts in the 2028-2029 school year. And that is dependent on the enactments of the new school districts. These financial frameworks are designed to ensure equitable distribution of resources across districts. This represents a huge departure from our current system of education funding, where each individual district sets their own budget. So this was a system where pupil funding across public schools ranges from around $10,700 to $24,100. So you can see how that wide disparity just leads to really unequal opportunities across the state. So that's one thing they were trying to address. So with this foundational formula, I have kind of a very basic formula on the page here. It starts with a base amount of funding per student, and then it adjusts that base amount for things like economically disadvantaged students, those that need additional needs, such as, are they multi-language learners? Are there students with disabilities? So there's adjustments in student weights and district weights to basically increase the funding that goes to the schools with the highest needs. School choice eligibility. That's another thing that was addressed as part of Act 73. To qualify as an eligible independent school, the independent school must be in a supervisory union or school district that does not operate a public school for some or all grades. In other words, if an independent school is located in a district that already has a full K-12 public school system, that independent school will not be eligible for tuitioning. Another requirement is that the independent school must have had at least 25% of its student body during the 23-24 school year funded via Vermont Public School District tuitioning in order to remain eligible. And then finally, in terms of operations and standards, Act 73 sets a statewide class size minimums, a unified school calendar, consistent graduation requirements, a requirement for the Agency of Education to develop 3-year special ed strategic plan, and it initiates state aid for school construction program and advisory board. These measures aim to provide a cohesive and high quality educational experience for all students. I'll briefly touch upon the class size minimum requirements. So grade 1, that's 10 students, grade 2 through 5, 12 students, grade 6 through 8, 15 students, and grades 9 through 12, 18 students. That's generally in your core curriculum classes. It's not special, right? Okay. So we've got 4 key working groups that were set up by Act 73. It's important to note that these are not rulemaking bodies; these are advisory bodies, right? The legislature actually has to take these up and pass these, right? So that the redistricting task force puts forward the maps, but the legislature does not have to accept them. So the first one we have listed here is the Commission on the Future of Public Education. That has actually been in place for a little bit longer, but the scope was revised as part of Act 73. And its key charges are to define which roles and directions belong to local versus state level control, update responsibilities of school boards and the electorate. They are recommending a transparent community process for school closure decisions, and to create a public monitoring process. And they've held a number of meetings statewide at this point in time. Their draft report is actually out and available, not final yet. It is due by December 15th. The redistricting task force, this is one of the most important bodies. They're responsible for recommending new statewide district configurations by December 1st. It's coming up fast, 3 weeks away, right? So they've had a number of meetings already. They met today, they have one meeting left, and then we'll get into the various proposals in just a minute for the redistricting task force. Just note that a lot of their work, they've done a lot of work. There's really smart people on that task force, but it's a really short timeline, right? They just started in August and they got to come up with maps and go through it and synthesize a lot of data and come up with recommendations by the 1st of December. So no very tall task for that task force. The voting board working group is another body that is responsible for ensuring that there is equal or equitable voter representation in school board elections. So they will decide when these new maps are drawn, how many directors does that board get? Or how many directors are going to be on the board? How the town is going to be represented by those board of directors? And how are those basically lines for the elections going to be drawn up? So it's a very important working group that is basically running completely parallel to the redistricting task force. And then lastly, we have the state aid for school construction working group. That plays a pivotal role. They're going to guide the implementation for the state aid for school construction program. This includes prioritizing projects and creating funding recommendations. There's a comprehensive report due by December 15th for that group. Ultimately, like there's a lot of work that's being done right now by all of these groups. So it's been a real challenge to drink from the fire hose as we try to understand all this information. So key dates for Act 73. What I will point out here, right? So we've talked about the December 1st redistricting task force. That task force started work in August. Let's see, the voting ward working group that was formed and started meeting in October. So a lot's happening right now, leading up to this legislative session. That is when ultimately, we'll either hopefully maybe accept some maps, maybe not. And then if the maps are accepted, those regional school districts will assume full operational responsibility by July 1st of 2028. Again, that's like only if the other key milestones are met and they're actually maps passed. So just want to stress this because I can't stress this enough. There are a lot of decisions that are currently being made around funding and governance. You can kind of see it on this page. And an important caveat to this timeline, if the legislature fails to adopt a new district map by the end of 2026, then that foundation funding formula we talked about and the new property tax classifications, those get repealed. And if no map is ultimately adopted, most of the governance and structural changes, such as the foundation formula, don't move forward. All right, so we've talked a little bit about what's happened so far. There's been a lot of meetings of the redistricting task force. That's met 7 times, including earlier today. There's one remaining on November 20th. We have submitted a resolution for consideration declaring our intent to move forward with merging our towns into a single district if a map passes. The redistricting task force has had 4 public hearings, although none have really been in close proximity to Lamoille North, unfortunately. The redistricting task force has focused their efforts on 3 maps, which we'll cover next. And then I would encourage you, if you do have public comment, there's a public comment period. It's generally an hour that's set aside in each of those meetings. And if you feel really strongly about anything, I would urge you to attend and provide some written comment or even verbal comments to the task force.
And Rainey has.
Yeah, I think
some
Dylan
thoughts.
handed some out. I think there's still some on the table back there. We tried to put together a list, and granted, one of them took place today, but there are 4 upcoming public comment opportunities. Thank you. This sheet outlines the dates. There is a QR code that you could scan on your phone. You do need to register for the meeting so that they know that you would like to leave your public comment. But there's 4 upcoming opportunities. They're listed here.
So the voting award working group has met twice at this point in time, October 1st and November 5th. As I said, it's that their work is largely concurrent with the redistricting task force. So, you know, we're closely monitoring what they're going to recommend in terms of the number of directors and the representation that they ultimately recommend. And then lastly, the Commission on the Future of Public Education is set to conclude its work in the coming month. Draft report is available. Final report's due December 15th. Some of the highlights that are expected to be covered in the report are that the vision for public education should be set at the state level by the State Board of Education and the Agency of Education. One of the recommendations that's already in their draft report is that they're going to recommend coupling of healthcare collective bargaining with negotiations for salaries and compensation. So today's world, we negotiate salaries locally, and healthcare gets collectively bargained by the state. And it hasn't necessarily led to great outcomes for the taxpayer. And I really think that commission really thinks it makes sense to move those to a consistent level. And then they're going to have a number of recommendations around the process for school closures. That's going to include things like starting discussions spanning multiple meetings at least 18 months in advance in a community that is impacted by a school closure. They're recommending completion of public input surveys. They're recommending formation of a steering committee of a school board to cover closures. So they're recommending a fairly robust process that be followed if a district ultimately decides to close a school. And then one of their other recommendations is that the AOE, Agency of Education, must monitor Act 73 and provide regular reporting to the legislature and state board. So I have no surprises, but I don't. It's probably fair to say that the Agency of Education is not always carried through on some of their directives. All right, so quickly, Lamoille North by the numbers before we get into some of these redistricting maps and options, just to get us grounded. Lamoille North, we cover 251 square miles, 1,800 students, 7 schools, plus Green Mountain Technology and Career Center. And we have about 500 staff members. So what's to come with Act 73? So the redistricting task force seems to be coalescing around 3 different maps. The first is a Board of Cooperative Education Services map. So when you hear that, it's referred to as BOCES. Think educational shared services. We'll go and click down in each of these. There's a proposed CTE map, which configures districts around a modified version of Vermont's 15 service regions for CTE. The plan assumes new districts will benefit from greater scale and elimination of artificial boundaries. And then the third option is a proposed regional comprehensive high school map that envisions new or expanded regional hub high schools designed and governed to govern collaboratively by neighboring districts. The plan would use targeted construction aid to incentivize partnerships. Private academies could apply to become public regional hubs through local district approval. We're gonna go click down on each of these. So for the BOCES map, that basically is aligning right now with the regions for the VSA. We are in the Winooski Valley region that covers 47 towns, 60 schools, and just under 15,000 students. The CTE map that's being discussed, that is all of the Lamoille area district and the towns that are tech center supports. It's 15 towns, 22 schools, and 4,280 students. Remember, like, the magic number that was put forth in Act 73 is 4,000 to 8,000. And then the third option, the regional comprehensive high school map, that's one regional high school, which right now, that dot with the black circle around it is Lamoille High School, and up to that, that would support about 1,800 students. And we'll go again one click down further into each of these. All right, so for both of these, Board of Cooperative Education Services. The first part is a consolidation of education services into 5 regions. Talked about those. Would be the Winooski Valley region. And they want to basically provide shared services within that region for areas such as special education, professional development, CTE, and business operations, and eventually other shared service areas such as technology support, purchasing, things that could benefit from greater scale. A lot of times these are kind of maybe in some cases high intensity, lower frequency items like delivering professional development, right? So there's been some thought. A lot of rural states, including many neighboring states, leverage BOCES. I think they've seen some success with them. In the state of Vermont, it's not really commonplace. It's generally a voluntary action. There's a few partnerships, but it's not really pervasive across the state. And then in part 2 of the BOCES map is basically think of it as strategic mergers. They would focus on the smallest districts first, where there are fewer than 500 students. So not us. I just want to be clear. Lamoille North would not be in scope at first. We have way more than 500 students. Okay, moving on to the CTE map. And this is kind of hot off the press as of late Friday evening for today's meeting. So it didn't give a lot of people a lot of time to react. But the latest map actually for the first time specified the governance structure for the districts in the region. And it put basically all of the Lamoille area in one district. So meaning our board, Lamoille South's boards, OSSU's board would cease to exist, and there would just be one board. So you can see that this is a huge change from current state, right? Going from 7 schools to 22 schools, going from 1,800 students to almost 4,300 students, and going from an area of 251 square miles to 636 square miles. So you can see that the towns represented here includes Cambridge all the way to the west, all the spanning over to like Stannard, Greensboro to the east. Some of the concerns that we actually had to react quickly, leading like the board chair, which I was in full support of, issued some commentary today to the task force. Our concerns that this map lacks research evidence to support that it's actually, we're going to actually yield benefits from this map. It's operationally inefficient. It combines vast geographic areas under one governance structure and makes daily operations exceedingly complex and inefficient, which is exactly what the opposite of what Act 73 intended. And that research shows that when systems grow too large, bureaucracy expands faster than classroom impact, creating layers of management rather than direct support for students in schools. So at some point, there's actually a tipping point, and instead of seeing economies of scale, we actually see diseconomies of scale. Another concern is lack of proximity between leadership and schools. Now, I'm very proud to say I think we have an extremely accessible superintendent today. Could you imagine how that might change if we had one superintendent covering 636 square miles? It's not a stretch to say that that superintendent would be a heck of a lot less accessible. It just means that central offices would be geographically distant from the schools they are intended to support, and principals who already manage complex school needs, they lose meaningful access to central office support and responsiveness. And ultimately to function, a large entity like this would need to consider maybe a assistant superintendent or, multiple regional superintendents and administrative tiers, which could add cost and complexity instead of reducing them. Let's see. Next concern, undermines existing governance structure. The proposal would fracture some existing supervisory unions and districts contrary to the law's directives. And last but not least, there's an unsubstantiated approach to expanding CTE opportunities. The argument there is that aligning governance with CTE centers, yes, it's somewhat unsubstantiated. There's actually going to be a benefit there. All right, and lastly, the third map, the Regional Comprehensive High School map. This map focuses on consolidating high schools and regions to provide students with a high school within roughly a 30-minute driving radius. This plan assumes the continued existence of elementary schools in locations that currently operate elementary schools and the option of full-time pre-K in elementary schools. This map depends on identifying and targeting construction aid, as in most cases, these high schools are not suitable to support an entire region or do not exist. Private academies could apply to its host district to become a high school. It also assumes that construction of new high schools creates opportunities for the state or district to develop and operate alternative settings that systematically meet the needs of students who need specialized settings. What the task force has implied in this proposal is that there would only be 21 high schools around the state. The premise here is that district mergers would not be voluntary and would be incentivized by school construction to help promote greater access to regional comprehensive high schools.
And you have to imagine the cost associated with that.
Yeah, I think we haven't really gone down the path of doing a full-blown, cash flow analysis, net present value cash flow analysis to figure out, okay, there's going to be massive construction dollars that go into either building new high schools or enhancing or augmenting existing high schools. Is that worth it? Again, the task force has had its work cut out for them. They're moving forward with their charge, and these are the maps that they've come up with. All right, Lamoille North actions and activities. Me, myself, as the VSBA rep, and I also sit on the executive committee of the VSBA. I've been working hard to stay informed through all of this. We have a regular agenda item where we do Act 73 and legislative updates for the board. we've put public meetings in our districts. We submitted a resolution about merging, our willingness to merge our elementary and secondary high school districts. If Act 73 were to move forward, I think that's largely been falling on deaf ears so far, because all they did was produce a map that ignores our current governance structure. And more work there. I mean, I would still encourage everybody to speak out. And then we've been working on informing everybody through emails and newsletters to keep everybody apprised of everything that's happening here. As you can see, there's still a lot of questions to be answered. We certainly share a lot of those questions with you, but I think we would open it up to some questions from the floor.
Yeah, and I would say that we have yet to understand how this is going to benefit our students. We have yet to understand what the costs are going to be associated with this. And we are really about an excellent public education system. We need to, that means our students are at the heart of that. How are we helping our students? And property taxes, that is a common concern. We don't have any information about how that is going to be impacted, but in fact, there are hints that certain kinds of consolidation will in fact raise property taxes for some towns. So how do you responsibly make decisions about this when you don't have those answers? Thank you, Mark. I encourage people to fill out questions. I have been getting lots and lots of weather alerts. So I need for people to be very, very careful driving home. Please leave questions that you have on the table. We will get back to you. Please drive carefully. Richard Bailey, Richard Westman, Richie Westman, Coach Heather Hobart, community partner. I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight and for your bravery in coming out in this weather. And Erin, thank you for being our favorite reporter.